The ladders of trust have once again been expelled from Love and Hip Hop Atlanta. This time, Karlie Redd holds the key to Kirk Frost's entire hidden universe. Set sources claim that Karlie brought a final envelope into the room. She set what insiders are calling her final receipt on the table with a composed, determined look that chilled everyone. Fans are already mentioning the event that altered the rules, the proof that nobody saw coming. Kirk thought he had buried the evidence forever. Whispers turned to gasps as Karlie opened the package and found reservations, letters, and even audio clips that revealed a more intricate double life than anybody could have ever imagined. Rashida was reportedly left speechless and on the edge of tears as the cast froze in complete shock. Nor did Kirk sit on the other side of her. Flynn? She just stared at the table as though he was waiting for the final blow. Admirers are screaming on the internet right now. This changes everything across social media threads. Did Karlie overdo it, or was this her turning point? Watch closely, because what we're hearing could totally alter all of the relationships on the show. The crew was finishing shooting a routine scene when Karlie Redd quietly walked into the lot. No one expected. It wasn't the usual comedic sass or theatrical swagger she usually brought to the occasion. With a steady posture and steely eyes, she held it in her hand. She was holding a little manila envelope that seemed to weigh the entire cosmos. Whispers ran through the cast as she made her way to the lounge area, where Kirk Frost was sitting and talking softly to Bambi. Rashida hovered nearby, her eyes cautious as if sensing the approaching storm, yet her face calm. Karlie continued. She proceeded straight to the center of the room and placed the envelope on the coffee table with care. The possibility of it landing resonated with the abrupt hush. Kirk looked up with a frown on his face as Bambi's hand sprang to her lips. As though the envelope had suddenly become radioactive, Rashida came forward and gazed at it. Without a word, Karlie opened it and pulled out the first document photograph. The woman standing next to Kirk has never been seen by Rashida or the other actors. Although the bodies were not touching, their angles suggested an intimacy too personal for casual conversation. She put it on display for everyone to see. This isn't just gossip. Karlie's quiet comment relieved the tension. This is evidence. As the camera captured each remark, Rashida's eyes grew wide and her palm flew to her lips. Kirk rushed forward, his hands resting on his knees as if they were getting ready to make contact. The rest of the performers walked in a loose circle. Curiosity and fear coexisted in their expressions. Other things Karlie put there included plane schedules for places Kirk had never mentioned, hotel receipts obtained under false pretenses, along with a printed snapshot of text conversations suggesting a late-night encounter. Each paper she placed pressed against Kirk's painstakingly constructed wall like a brick. But after seeing the preview, I realized that some realities are worth revealing, she continued. I got these weeks ago, but I held on to them, thinking maybe it wasn't my place. Rashida brushed away the tears that gathered in her eyes, trying to keep her cool. Karlie, what are you doing here? Karlie gazed up at her as she said, her voice trembling. Why now? Because you deserve to know, Rashida, Kirk said, his mouth quivering but unuttering. Are you worthy of knowing the truth before everyone else? The only sound to break the long silence was the hum of equipment being placed down around them. Bambi cleared her throat and whispered, "This is a lot. We must be careful how we react to it." Karlie, however, shook her. The room shivered at the words, "Don't wait any longer." Not after the video from last night. Not after Rashida sobbed her way off the set. Everything is altered by this. Online fans had already started piecing together rumors, but it was impossible to pretend it was merely drama for ratings when it was happening live. The tension was uncomfortably genuine. Mimi moved forward after seeing from the sides, insisting that we need background. Let's listen to Kirk, who is standing slowly and swallowing. He looked over each document. Then, ATA. Wanted you not to see this, he said in a low voice. And then he looked at Rashida and said, "This is not how I intended things to turn out." Rashida muttered, her voice tense. "Then explain." Kirk glanced from Rashida to Karlie and back again. "I thought I could keep things apart. My marital errors, but I was mistaken." Rashida shook her shoulders and looked at Kirk, tears running down her cheeks. "But you lied to me," she said. Her voice trailing off, Karlie noted with a puzzled expression. "But you lied to our kids." She didn't celebrate, she just watched the truth unfold. Kirk stood with his head bowed. The cast drifted closer. Rashida fell to her knees and buried herself inside. Production allowed the situation to play out while crew members waited, unsure of whether to intervene or not. Although raw events had been shown on reality TV before, this seemed different. Heartbreak without filtering. Doc Kirk knelt beside Rashida and gently touched her shoulder. "I apologize," he said softly. "I'm so sorry." She began to cry uncontrollably. Her eyes met his as she looked up. Apologies don't make receipts better. Every tear and tremor in her voice was recorded on video, and viewers at home would later relive those scenes. Talking about Karlie's role as a truth-bringer, Rashida's suffering, and Kirk's candor, Rashida got to her feet after what seemed like an eternity. She wiped her cheeks vigorously and whispered, "I need air." They were surrounded by a circle of uneasy support from the rest of the cast. She turned and left Kirk and Karlie in the room, without saying another word. Kirk watched her go without moving. The envelope was open on the table, the paper scattered like leaves. Karlie stooped to pick up a page, then paused to look at Kirk. "Are you prepared to face the future?" she asked quietly, and Kirk gave a deep, husky nod. They all knew that they would be involved, whether they wanted to or not. Rashida leaned against the wall outside the set, shivering despite the warmth of the afternoon. And her phone buzzed with missed calls from Kirk and text messages from friends. She felt a strange clarity despite her pain, and even though the truth had liberated her from delusions, it also left her vulnerable and vulnerable. A break is a dot inside production. The sound of the altercation continued after the cameras stopped recording, and crew members hurriedly whispering to one another while helpers pushed the papers aside and packaged the scene for the editors to use in the next episode. By the time the sun set over the Atlanta skyline, the aftermath was all over. Fan pages shared screenshots of the receipts Karlie had dropped, calling them the decisive evidence that changed everything. As hashtags like #LOSTRECE went viral, social media influencers analyzed every picture, speculating on Kirk's redemption story and Rashida's next move, and Karlie's unexpected turn as the one with the courage to reveal the secrets. As the night grew darker, Rashida texted Karlie, speechless, her heart tangled with pain, gratitude, and anger. Karlie's response was prompt. "The truth is something you deserve, always." And something changed at that moment. Atlanta's hip-hop and love scene would never be the same after a single envelope, and a woman with the guts to open it changed the season's plot. And every episode after that would be impacted by the fallout. Kirk was still standing in the middle of the lounge with an envelope in his hand as the cameras shifted away from Rashida's turbulent departure. And the final receipt was cold against his hand. He felt as though he was watching his own life fall apart in slow motion as the stage crew's hum ticked off cow sheets and gathered equipment. Karlie stood a few steps away and then circled back. And despite everything she had just revealed, she crossed her arms and maintained her eyes. Bambi hung uncertainly behind them. We've seen confrontations in drama clubs and tears, but nothing like this. "This doesn't feel real," Bambi muttered as she approached Karlie. "This goes beyond television," she said, folding her arms more tightly and nodding. "We're talking about these lives, real emotions, real consequences." Meanwhile, Kirk threw the envelope on the coffee table, the printed receipt that Karlie had marked as the last proof surrounded by papers. and his head, hands, and shoulders trembled as he slid onto the love seat next to the table. It's as if the weight of his mistakes were real stones stifling his output. Assistant Claire hovered just off camera, unsure whether to step in or give them room, and she looked at the screen where the directors debated whether to roll the cameras again or take a break. Ultimately, they decided to stay because this was too powerful a moment to miss. And the pure, agonizing feeling was exactly what the network was looking for. Minutes went by before Kirk finally got up, a voice hoarse. He turned to everyone and said, "I have to explain." Every word sounded forced, as if he were drawing courage from an empty hole. The woman in the picture wasn't who you thought she was. Bambi gasped in surprise as Rashida stiffened up, her eyes sparkling with tears again. Karlie crossed her arms and stared, waiting to see what Kirk would do. "Listen," Kirk continued, adjusting his wedding band. "We had a falling out years ago. I went there to have a conversation and resolve any misunderstandings. Those travels were never supposed to appear to be mysteries. I believed I could manage it. Fans would later wonder if that explanation made sense. Thought I could handle it?" The room was silent. Spice and Mimi stood with their arms clasped together for support. Slowly, Spice shook her head. Spice whispered, "I've never seen someone lie so convincingly." Mimi frowned as she watched Kirk pull back. While some found it plausible, others saw it as a weak cover-up. Two ex-lovers are working out mistakes. "He's doing everything he can to keep his face intact now," she said. As Rashida said, putting a distance between them and taking a few steps back. "You think I deserve that story?" With a raised but restrained voice, she demanded, "Story or no story? You told a lie. While you were living a different life, you'll let me stand there and pretend everything was all right." Rashida's voice cracked as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Kay," she continued, turning to face Karlie. "I trusted you, too," she said, focusing on Karlie. "You've held these receipts for months. Why don't you provide me with them in prove? I waited for everyone to arrive." "'Cause you needed to feel this," Karlie said, her jaw clenched as she inhaled deeply. "You needed the world to see it too. Understand, I wasn't playing games." To overcome denial, the truth occasionally requires a hearing. Rashida's mouth trembled. She gave Karlie a long glance before averting her gaze. "Perhaps you're correct," she muttered. "Perhaps I needed to be seen by everyone. But what do we do now that they have?" Kirk took a deep breath, glanced at Bambi, who gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head, and then turned back to Rashida, speaking softly. "I'm available for everything you desire." Although his tone was sincere, whether it conveyed self-preservation or sincerity depended on the listener. Bambi moved forward and touched Rashida's arm. She whispered softly, "You set the pace, and we'll follow you." Rashida nodded and exhaled nervously. That moment of solidarity was captured on camera. It may indicate that the wreckage is healing. Production paused for a brief moment to restart. Crew members arrived to clear the table and collect the receipts. In the next scene, writers and directors debated how to include this emotional high point into the next episode. They were aware that they had hit the mark with a storyline that converts indifferent viewers into ardent admirers. Rashida voluntarily remained behind, with Karlie and Kirk as the set emptied. The envelope was now empty on the floor, and the three of them stood in a tiny circle. Between them, three realities were exposed, and an unanswered question lingered. Will this three-person family, 2 wives and 1 husband, be able to move on? The silence was broken by Karlie. First, she added, softly, "The receipts are gone." RASHED, with my eyes still watery but resolute. I glanced at Kirk. She said, "I don't know if we can get past this, but I know I need honesty every single day now. The shadows are gone." Kirk pulled Rashida's hand gently and nodded. "I swear." "To be honest with you," he said, "no mysteries going forward. However, the reality still stands. in the hopes of finding closure or at least a place to start. She watched Rashida's response. Small grins were given by those who had remained close to support Rashida. Fans were reminded by their presence that no one faces greater challenges. Alone, loyalty and friendship are important. The ensemble gathered to continue recording smaller scenes once the emotional dust settled. Slowly, the jovial banter and laughter returned. However, there was a fresh undercurrent of caution and respect. Boundaries had changed online, and everyone knew it. On all media, reaction videos and clips of the last minute of receipt went viral. While praising Rashida's courage, viewers questioned Kirk's genuineness and praised Karlie's prompt action. Forums blazed. Rashida is the team to follow. Kirk must establish his worth. The MVP is actually Karlie. The set felt both lighter and significantly altered at the end of the day. The envelope has vanished. The influence persisted even after the receipts were gathered as proof. Moments like these, unadulterated, unedited, and genuine, would define seasons. Karlie and Bambi strolled out hand in hand as the cameras were finally turned off for the evening, their bonds stronger than ever, endured one another. Kirk moved silently but resolutely next to Rashida. The empty set behind them stood as a testament to the strength of the truth and the price of keeping it a secret for too long. Still reeling from the intensity of the confrontation, Karlie exited the stage under the last of the dusk light. The team proceeded inside to prepare for the following scene, but most of them were whispering to each other about what they had just seen. The conversation swiftly shifted to the video. Every shudder in Rashida's voice, every glint of remorse in Kirk's eyes, and the icy determination in Karlie's stance had been caught on tape. Social media took off as night fell. The video of Karlie making that last like wildfire, the receipts spread. It was recut into dozens of tiny films by fans on Twitter. Rashida's expression of incredulity is captured in each timed landing on the most gut punch. Karlie's quiet satisfaction, Kirk's mute stumble. It was dubbed the most tragic moment in the history of the show by commentators. Bloggers conjectured about Kirk's marriage's prospects for survival. Kirk and Rashida, meanwhile, were led to a tiny private area backstage, offset in space. The producers wanted to provide them with an instant chance to deal with the aftermath in a more controlled setting. Karlie was invited, but she graciously declined, saying she had fulfilled her obligation. Now, this was Kirk and Rashida's turning point. Rashida sat at a round table in the darkened room. On the tabletop before her, the manila envelope closed. Kirk walked in and softly shut the door. There was only one producer sitting quietly off to the side with no lights or cameras. Kirk inhaled deeply. He said, "I'm sorry," in a husky voice. Rashida's shoulders trembled as she spoke. "I know I hurt you more than anything else ever has." She examined the envelope. She muttered, "You've given me grounds to question you for so long that I'm not even sure if I can accept that apology." "I want you to have these," Kirk replied, reaching for the envelope. "All of them." He opened his jacket and pulled out a stack of new documents, more flight records, receipts from dinners, and unedited voice memos. Do-read eyes widened. "You kept more?" she questioned, her voice a mix of disbelief and grief. And Kirk nodded, his eyes sad. "I wanted you to see the whole picture, even the parts Karlie didn't have." She said, "I want you to know that I'm taking responsibility for every mistake." He swallowed. The only sound in the room was Rashida's labored breathing. And she took the papers from Kirk's hand without opening them right away. Why now? After everything, why bring more receipts? She inquired quietly. Truth requires context, so Kirk glanced up and remarked, "Not just a few scenes. You are worthy of hearing the whole tale." Rashida looked at the envelope instead of Kirk. The room seemed to hold its breath as she slowly turned the pages. The next page showed a series of Redd. Share invoices at 2 in the morning. The last page showed a voicemail transcript in which Kirk's voice said, "I know I messed up, but I need you to hear me." The first page showed another hotel receipt, this time for an out-of-state stay, which Kirk had listed as a business expense. She glanced at Kirk with tears in her eyes and trembled as she set down the documents. "This changes everything," she murmured softly, and Kirk nodded. "I hope it does," she said. They sat in quiet for a while, two people looking at the black and white wreckage of their love. And then Rashida snapped the envelope shut. "I need time to process," she said, getting up. "I can't just forgive and forget." Kirk got up as well, and he murmured, "I understand." The next morning, filming resumed, but with a different plan. Producers decided to film a series of solo confessionals, capturing raw, unfiltered reflections from every major cast member. Karlie's part had been clear. She'd done her duty. Fans wanted to see how each person processed what Karlie had exposed. "I'll wait as long as it takes." They left the room together, but walked side by side, a fragile peace between them. Production staff watched from the hallway, knowing that this private reconciliation would influence every scene that was to come. Rashida first entered the confessional, looking exhausted but more composed than ever. She addressed the camera directly, without any melodrama, saying, "I've spent weeks torn between who I love and what I deserve," in a steady voice. "Every time I looked at Kirk, I saw 100 reasons to stay and 100 more to leave. But I made a promise to myself. No more shadows." She paused, then said, "It's time to decide if this marriage can be rebuilt. Brick by brick, truth by truth, by truth." "I've been a man running from my mistakes," Kirk said, "but hiding from the light only made the shadows grow." Editors marked that clip as a highlight for the next episode, knowing that viewers would be waiting for every word. Kirk then took his turn, sitting squared-shouldered and speaking in a tone that was different from his previous raw admission. "I aspire to be a husband who makes the daily decision to be transparent." Fans later said that it was one of the most heartfelt apologies they had heard on the show, as he concluded his confession by apologizing to Rashida and their kids and vowing to let his deeds speak louder than words. After that, MB's confessional examined how Karlie's actions affected the larger group of friends. She confessed to being a bystander to Rashida's suffering and promised to be a better friend, naming Karlie as an example. Spice then recorded her thoughts, comparing the family drama on screen to her own experiences and applauding Karlie's bravery while cautioning about the cost of exposure. "Sometimes truth is painful," she said, "but it's the only path to healing." Internet conversation erupted as the crew pieced together these confessionals, and memes featuring Karlie's piercing eyes. And in the midst of the fan frenzy, the producers released a teaser for the upcoming episode, which featured a montage of tearful confrontations, solemn confessions, and tense silences punctuated by the caption, "Truth is only the beginning." Podcasts discussed whether Kirk's redemption arc could succeed, and fan polls tracked sentiments, with the majority siding with Rashida, while a smaller group felt Kirk was being unfairly judged. Back on set, Kirk and Rashida recorded a tentative joint that was perceived as a straightforward discussion over coffee in the cast lounge. There were no producer comments or pre-written lines, just two people attempting to connect dots after taking a long sip. Rashida said, "I want to trust you again." Kirk reached out, hesitated, and then lightly touched her fingers, saying, "I'll earn it." The camera caught that small gesture, the handshake of hope, and the set crew let out a collective sigh. Fans who watched that clip online referred to it as the season's most hopeful moment. As filming came to an end for the day, Karlie stood by herself on the empty stage, thinking, and texted Rashida, "We did it." Rashida's reply came almost instantly, "Thank you." In the days ahead, more during all of this, one thing remained constant: the power of that final receipt Karlie dropped. It had changed lives, reshaped relationships, and reminded everyone that on Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, Truth was the most compelling drama of all. Karlie's brunch toast continued to reverberate in the air, and when production ended for the day, the lot quickly emptied, but inside the editing bays, the screen's editors crouched over timelines, listening to microphones record every tremor in Rashida's voice, every lapse in Kirk's apology, every steely resolve. In Karlie's declaration, every clip was labeled must-air priority fan reaction clip, as if they were curating evidence in a courtroom instead of creating reality TV. Meanwhile, Rashida slipped away from the lot to a rented loft a few miles away, and she invited a few close friends, Spice, Mimi, and Bambi, who came discreetly with food and encouragement. The atmosphere was intimate, the kind of gathering not intended for cameras. "You did what you had to," Spice whispered, as Mimi passed around gentle blankets. Rashida shut the door behind them and collapsed onto a velvet couch, tears streaming down her face again despite her previous strength. On set, Kirk found himself alone in the production office, leaping through the notebook of promises he'd jotted down. Mimi said gently, and Bambi put a hand over Rashida's. "You decide the next step," Bambi reminded her, and Rashida nodded, finding strength in their support. Frank, he had written thorough plans. He stared at the pages, wondering if ink on paper could ever amount to a foundation strong enough to rebuild trust. His phone buzzed with messages. His kids were requesting dinner, and business associates were setting up meetings. But Kirk ignored them all because he needed to concentrate on one conversation, the one with Rashida that hadn't yet happened on camera. Editors contacted Kirk's manager to get a brief on-camera update, asking if he would be willing to participate in an upcoming group dinner scene. Kirk's manager said that he was willing, but only if he could speak freely, unscripted. Producers hesitated, and scripted moments were precious, but they also ran the risk of losing their minds. After a heated meeting, they decided Kirk would join one. A long table awaited them, set for 6, with Rashida at the head, resplendent in a simple wrap dress, her eyes shadowed but determined. The scene would be shot documentary style, with no cues, no prompts, just raw interaction. On the day of filming, the cast arrived in small taxis, dressed casually but coordinated in muted tones. And the walls of the restaurant's private room were covered in dark, wood-framed black and white photographs of Atlanta's music legends. The cameras rolled as servers brought bread baskets and water cars, and the first moments were awkward, with cast members fidgeting and avoiding eye contact as forks clinked against plates. The silence lasted until Mimi cleared her throat, saying softly, "This feels like a family dinner, but the elephant in the room is huge." Her words broke the tension like a hammer dot. Kirk sat opposite her, chin resting on his hand, eyes bloodshot. From lack of sleep, she looked at Kirk and said, "We've been here before, but this is the first time it's really down to us. Him, me, and the receipts." She gently tapped the envelope next to her plate, and Kirk's fingers twitched at the mention. He nodded and swallowed hard. "I brought something, too," Kirk said, reaching into his blazer and pulling out a small box of printed voicemails, including transcripts from friends who had tried to warn him about business calls where he had slipped and confessed the affair. The camera panned Rashida's face as she watched him place the envelope on the table. "I want you to have the whole story," he said, his voice raw. "Thank you for trying, Kirk," Rashida replied, forcing a smile as tears welled up in her eyes. "We'll work it out. We're here for you." Bambi continued, gazing around at the gathering. No judgment, just love. Her voice was firm, expressing both caution and optimism. Bambi reached over and placed her hand over Rashida's. "This is significant," Karlie whispered softly as she sat back and studied Kirk. "But words are insufficient." As the meal came to an end, Kirk stood up and asked for a moment to speak. The room fell silent, and he paced slowly around the table with his hands clasped. "I know I squandered your trust," he said, looking directly at Rashida. "I hurt you, our family, our friends. I'm sorry." She tapped her own folder of receipts. On the edge of the table for emphasis, action speaks louder. The dinner proceeded with careful conversation about setting new boundaries. Hiring a counselor, using transparency apps to share locations, and conducting frequent check-ins during lunch. Fans watching later online dissected each suggestion, discussing whether the solutions felt sincere or gimmicky. He stepped closer, his voice low but clear. "I choose you." Rashida's lips quivered as she glanced around at her support Karlie's unblinking gaze. "I promise that every day I will choose honesty. I'll be accountable. I'll let you see my world. No secrets. You want proof?" He said, following Bambi's nod, Spick's tearful eyes, and Mimi's encouragement. She turned back to Kirk and got up to face him. "I hear you," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "And I'm willing to see," she said, reaching out and taking his hand. Kirk squeezed her hand, clearly relieved and determined. "But if I ever see shadows again, this is over." The cameras remained in place while they embraced a hug that represented caution and forgiveness in a tenuous reconciliation. The team acknowledged the emotional accomplishment with a quiet applause after the scene was over. Producers caught tears and laughter on video. That evening, she shared a black and white picture of the two of them on her personal Instagram, not the show's account, but her private one, with their joined hands resting on a table covered in a scattering of receipts. Knowing that the video would be a ratings powerhouse and also having a genuine effect on viewers. Simply put, truth strengthens foundations. According to her caption, support from fans poured into the comments. "I'm proud of you. I feel hopeful because of this." Selecting one another each day is a sign of true love. Karlie doesn't say anything. On her own page, although she enjoyed the post from Rashida, her username appears in followers' feeds as a subtly significant recommendation. In the meantime, Kirk spoke separately with his management about landing a position on a talk show during the day to publicly discuss the incident outside of the reality TV context. His management was intrigued but wary. Controlling the story outside of the show might be possible with a well-crafted public apology. Cast members convened for a quick debriefing back on campus. A final round of brief confessionals was requested by the producers. In addition, Ziandi provided her viewpoint from the sidelines. Bambi, who was still burdened by her own previous quiet, and Mimi, who was considering the strength of female solidarity. Nuance was added by each confessional. Yandy emphasized the value of setting limits. Mimi emphasized the intricacy of forgiving. Bambi also promised to always be there for her friends when they needed her voice. In addition to a moving piano score, the mid-season trailer was released at the end of the week. Karlie laid the final receipt on the table as it opened. Cut to Rashida's look of shock. Then Kirk apologized while kneeling and crying. The screen's text said, "No one is safe when truth calls." Fans replied with thousands of vinidays that followed. Sponsors and advertisers lined up for product placement. Some cautious, some eager to align with the show's renewed authenticity. Network executives held meetings projecting that Season 13 would become one of the franchise's highest-rated runs, thanks in large part to Karlie's bold move and the emotional fallout that followed. Comments like, "I'm hooked," and like #LastReceipt, and #Strong trended for days. But behind the scenes, Rashida and Kirk knew that the show's cameras were just getting started. They had chosen a public path to healing, inviting cameras into their most vulnerable moments, but the real battle would continue in hallways, therapists' offices, and quiet nights at home. Karlie watched from her trailer as the storm she'd unleashed settled into a cautious calm. She typed a message to Rashida. "Thank you for seeing it through." Rashida's reply appeared. "Thank you for speaking." Their friendship, tested by the wreckage of secrets, had emerged stronger, and there was an unexpected silver lining in the season's darkest chapter. The echoes of truth lingered as the lot went dark and the set lights dimmed. Confessions were made, receipts were dropped, and a family was forever changed. Love and Hip Hop Atlanta Season 13 would set a new standard for reality TV drama as real lives. Real pain and real healing unfolded for a world that watched, wondered, and finally believed that truth, no matter how painful, could indeed change everything. Now that you've seen Karlie drop that last receipt and watched Rashida and Kirk navigate the wreckage of lies, what do you think will happen next? Did this daring exposure push Rashida too far, or is it the fresh start she needs? Can Kirk's open book approach and promises truly restore the trust he destroyed? Are you supporting Rashida's new chapter, supporting Kirk's redemption, or applauding Karlie for having the courage to be honest? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Which side are you on? What moment struck you the most? If Karlie's unwavering stare, Kirk's apology, or Rashida's tears gave you chills, please let us know. Or will the weight of those receipts continue to pull them under? Lastly, did Karlie's role as a truth teller save a marriage, or did she light the fuse for bigger explosions? Give this video a thumbs up if you're as engrossed in this season as we are. And don't forget to subscribe for every episode breakdown and behind-the-scenes look to ensure you don't miss a twist. Press the notification bell because the next bombshell on Love and Hip Hop Atlanta might be coming soon. You won't want to blink, we assure you.